Thank you for coming in early and chatting and just checking it's working okay. It's great to see so many people on screen this evening. I think 35 is getting on for as many as we've ever had before, but so it's really good that you've taken up the time this evening to come to our session on autism, and particularly warm welcome to Rachel, who I'll introduce properly in a moment, who's going to lead us in our session this evening. I'm just going to begin with a very short reflection, devotions, and then we'll get on with the rest of our session this evening. Obviously, autism this week has hit the headlines, maybe for not the right reasons. And so I couldn't resist finding a short, out of context piece of scripture which maybe illustrates some of what we've experienced earlier on this week. This comes from the second letter of Peter, chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. But false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will be false teaching amongst you, who will secretly bring in destructive opinions. They will even deny the master who brought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves. Even so, many will follow their licentious ways, and because of these teachers, the way of truth will be maligned. And in their greed, they will exploit you with deceptive words. Their condemnation, pronounced against them long ago, has not been idle, and their destruction is not asleep. I'll leave that there. Make of it what you will. But I'm sure that Rachel this evening isn't going to be one of those false prophets or teachers, and she will lead us in some truth around autism from our own experience as well. And I'm hopeful that all those others who are joining us this evening will also hear that and will be able to share openly, honestly, in the confidence of this space, some of their own experiences perhaps, and be able to ask questions in a way that feels safe and secure for them and for you. So we look forward to hearing what Rachel has to say and to hearing and reflecting on those words as we meet together in smaller groups perhaps, and then later on there's some questions and conversation in a plenary session. So before we do that, let me just open the meeting with a prayer. Let us pray. Loving God, we thank you for this evening and for the opportunity to meet together in this way, to continue to explore what it means for us to be a more able church, a place where all are welcome and included, a place where people can feel that they belong. And so we pray that in our thinking and in the things that are said and heard this evening, we would know that sense of your love and your grace amongst us. That we would know that the church is a place for each and every one of us. Whoever we are, whatever we bring, whatever life's experiences have thrown at us. So we thank you again for this company of people, company of your church. And we pray that you would be with us tonight as we meet together to share and to discuss. In Jesus' name, amen. And so I welcome Rachel. You've probably seen the flyer, but if not, I'll just say what it says on there. Rachel is a member of Beulah Reformed Church in Cardiff and works for the National Neurodivergence Team. National, that being Wales, that's good to say. And Rachel is late diagnosed autistic woman committed to working towards a more inclusive Wales, and hopes that by better understanding each other's differences, we may improve all our lives and create a happier, more cohesive society. That was helpful for all of us, I think, to just know a bit of your background, Rachel. I'm sure we'll perhaps hear a bit more about that now as we discover together a bit more about what autism is, and perhaps more poignantly isn't, and explore the importance of identity in the communities that we live and work and worship, and how we can all play our part in building that more inclusive church and society for Christ's sake. So I'm going to hand over to Rachel now, who's going to carry on and lead us in the next part of our session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David, for that lovely introduction, and thank you everyone for coming this evening. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to come along as well and have some conversations with you, because as we've discussed earlier, it's really important now more than ever. So yeah, so I'm a little bit nervous, so bear with me. I did send some slides to do some slides just so we've got some visuals, so you're not just having to look at my face throughout the whole the next 25 minutes or so. So Jason, are you able to share the slides? Okay, so who am I? Well, David gave a very nice introduction there. So my name's Rachel. I am 55 years old, married to my very lovely husband, Richard. And as David says, I'm a member of Beulah URC in Rhiwbina in North Cardiff, and it's lovely to see some familiar faces from Beulah here today, so thank you. I work for the National Neurodivergence Team, as David said, but until last year, I spent my career working in social services with adults with learning disabilities. I'm a proud mum to 19-year-old Reg, who made an appearance earlier on, and who's seen here on the left alongside his brother Ron, who's sadly no longer with us. And I am autistic. I very deliberately choose that word, autistic, because language is really important. I don't have autism. I'm not carrying it around like a handbag or other fashion accessory. I'm not living with or suffering from autism. I don't have autism spectrum disorder or ASD. I'm not disordered. And I'm most decidedly not on the spectrum. I'm autistic. By the way, I've included an image of a jigsaw piece here on the top left of this slide to remind me to mention that the imagery of puzzle pieces has really negative connotations in the autistic community. So please avoid using it. And if you see it used anywhere, I would suggest you look elsewhere for the information you were initially seeking. So try to avoid the puzzle pieces. So what is autism? It's a big question. It's a word we all hear a lot more these days, and you don't have to look too far to find reams of conflicting information, some of it really not healthy at all. It can all be a bit overwhelming and quite frankly hard to know where to start and what to believe. For this reason, in order to better understand what autism is, I thought it'd be helpful to first explore what it isn't. There are so many pervading myths about autism, which many people fervently believe to be true. It's not only frustrating for autistic people, but these myths and misunderstandings are actually harmful and leave us feeling totally misunderstood and invalidated. So if you only take one thing away from today, then please go and tell 10 people about these myths and misunderstandings and ask them to tell 10 people and so on. So for today, I've chosen 4 myths that we're going to look at and dispel, hopefully. So myth number 1, we're all a bit autistic. I hear this almost every day, and it's both upsetting and infuriating. I can categorically state that we are not all a bit autistic. Autism is a distinct neurotype, which means human beings are either autistic or they're not. You cannot be a little bit autistic any more than you can be a little bit pregnant. Telling an autistic person we're all a bit autistic is akin to telling a wheelchair user we all sit down sometimes. So please don't do this. That takes us to the next myth, myth number 2. All too often, you'll hear people refer to mildly autistic people, otherwise known as high functioning, and severely or profoundly autistic people, also called low functioning. This description is both inaccurate and misleading, as well as deeply offensive, as the autism spectrum is not linear. It helps to visualize the autism spectrum as a circle or globe, as seen in these 2 examples here. Thanks, Jason. So the spectrum is not linear, it's a circle or a globe, and these are just 2 of many examples you can find out there. It just hopefully gives you a little bit of a visualization of what the spectrum actually is. So whilst autistic people will share some common differences from non-autistic people, everyone's autistic profile is unique to them, and this is what the autism spectrum actually is. You might hear it called a spiky profile. It's basically a way of capturing each person's individual strengths, challenges, and differences in a range of areas, and will continuously fluctuate depending on many factors, such as environment, health, age, fatigue, stress levels, etc. It's therefore preferable to refer to a person's support needs rather than their perceived level of functioning, as someone might appear to be coping well, but most of their differences and challenges will remain hidden. That takes us to the next myth, lack of empathy. This myth is particularly distressing, as it leads people to believe we are cold, emotionless, and uncaring. This could not be further from the truth. The reality is that many autistic people are uber empathic. However, we might express that in different ways. This different way of expressing our emotional intelligence means that our attempts to connect with non-autistic people can often be missed, misinterpreted, or misunderstood. This difference is highlighted in the double empathy theory proposed by Damien Milton, whereby he suggests that both autistic and non-autistic people can struggle to empathize with each other due to fundamental differences in ways of perceiving and processing information. For me, I feel other people's emotions so deeply, I have to limit how much time I can spend around people. Their emotions wrap themselves around me like a cloak and rapidly drain my battery, but this does not equate to lack of empathy. Being autistic gives me a deep awareness of how difficult some situations can be for people. It helps me be extra considerate of other people's needs and feelings. Autism leads me to help and protect others, even if it just means sharing their emotional state. If someone is feeling sad, I can just sit in that sadness with them, offering a connection beyond words. So let's move to the last myth we're going to look at today. I frequently hear or read that it's important to talk slowly to autistic people, as we need additional time to process information. All too often, this leads to the misunderstanding that autistic people have limited intelligence and therefore need information delivered in short, bite-sized chunks. The reality is that autistic people's brains are often attempting to process every available stimulus simultaneously, which makes it incredibly difficult to focus in on the one piece of information you want to draw our attention to. In this way, it's not that we're slower at processing, we're actually processing far more information at any given point, and therefore need the additional time to sift through it all. So, a recurring theme from all these myths is that autism is a difference and not a deficit. Put simply, we experience the world differently. So let's explore some of those key differences. We've already talked a little about some of the different ways autistic people might process information, but let's explore this further. Executive functioning skills include things like planning, organising, working memory, and attention. Some examples of differences in this area for autistic people tend to be around starting and finishing tasks and task switching. and also problem solving, particularly in social situations. For example, rapidly working out alternative courses of action when faced with a sudden change of plan. Maintaining regular routines is one of the many coping strategies some autistic people adopt to help with these executive functioning differences, as well as preparing a range of appropriate approaches ahead of time, planning and preparing for different scenarios. It's why many of us ask for additional information before new activities or events. The more information we have in advance, the more mental preparation we can do and reduce the possibility of getting things wrong when we get there. This leads us nicely into communication differences, which impacts social interaction. Give clear, unambiguous, and detailed information at all times. And if an autistic person asks questions, we're not being rude. We simply want to rule out any chance of misinterpretation. It's also worth mentioning here that autistic people use facial expressions, tone, gesture, and body language differently. So it helps to be aware of this. For example, language and words are so important to me. So when people don't pay attention to the words I'm choosing to use, but instead use my facial expression or tone to try to decipher what I'm communicating, then that's where everything starts to rapidly unravel for me. But please also bear in mind that not everyone uses spoken language. Some autistic people will have other communication preferences. So always ask and tailor your communication style to theirs wherever possible. Turn taking in conversations is another area many autistic people struggle with. Non-autistic people seem to instinctively know when it's their turn to speak and when it's okay to interrupt. Please be patient with us and don't assume we're being rude if we do interrupt you. One great tip to take away: skip the small talk and dive straight into those deeper conversations. Tell us about your passions and enthusiasms and let us talk about ours. Sensory processing is the foundation of how we all experience the world. It's not just about the 5 known senses, but also includes balance, body awareness, and internal signals like hunger or emotion. For autistic people, sensory input can be amplified, dulled, or craved in ways that shape how we interact, learn, and regulate ourselves. Sensory overload goes beyond discomfort. It can trigger intense stress responses like fight, flight, or freeze, and often leads to burnout when unmanaged. There's no one-size-fits-all. Some of us are sensory seekers, others avoid certain inputs, and many of us shift between these states depending on context and stress levels. Put simply, we all perceive the world around us differently. For example, I experience the world through multiple senses simultaneously. Whilst this is frequently overwhelming, who else gets to see the colourful undulating patterns of birdsong or feel the warmth and gentle vibration of rainbows? Just a few of my many autistic joys. So how do autistic people compensate for these differences? Many autistic people develop strategies to try to fit in and help get through each day. This is known as masking or camouflaging. However, living in a world which isn't designed for our neurotype is exhausting and incredibly damaging. All too often, we're invalidated and gaslit on a daily basis, with people saying things like, "Don't be silly, it's not too noisy, too bright, too hot, too cold, too crowded, etc." Suppressing our instincts to flap, clap, or jump, operating in unnatural communication styles, and learning a myriad of unwritten social rules and codes is utterly exhausting, and not only leads to overwhelm, shutdown, meltdown, and burnout, but all too often leaves us feeling broken and worthless. Overperforming and overcompensating are also common forms of masking, especially in women. We're more prone to say yes to things, work longer hours, and generally push ourselves beyond reasonably expected limits in a bid to prove to the world that we are worthy, ignoring self-care in the process, and often leading to poor mental and physical health. Many autistic and neurodivergent people go on to develop a range of chronic health conditions, such as ME, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and many more. Did you know that autistic people are 9 times more likely to die by suicide? Sadly, autistic people frequently feel overwhelmed by everyday demands and hostile environments. This overwhelm can manifest in several ways. Most people are familiar with the concept of meltdowns, but might associate it with children and liken these outbursts to tantrums. The reality is that meltdowns can happen to autistic people of all ages, and unlike a tantrum, an autistic person will have no control over their meltdown. It is a sudden outpouring of emotions that simply can no longer be contained or managed. Meltdowns are incredibly frightening and leave you feeling vulnerable, embarrassed, and completely drained. Overwhelm can also manifest in shutdowns, where a person will gradually or rapidly withdraw into themselves, unable to communicate, and in many cases, unable to move or function in any meaningful way. The best way to offer support to someone in meltdown or shutdown is to provide a calm, quiet space and offer a reassuring presence from a close distance. Communication pathways are often closed off to the autistic person in this state, so keep conversation to a bare minimum, perhaps sporadic, short, softly spoken statements like, "It's okay, you're safe, I'm here when you need me." Autistic burnout is far more complex, usually the result of an autistic person operating under particularly stressful conditions for an extended period, whilst being denied the opportunity to self-regulate. Autistic burnout can last for months and has been known to take years to fully recover from. Whilst all of the things we've talked about so far are an everyday reality for many autistic people, it absolutely doesn't have to be this way. So let's look at some of the things that might help. There are so many ways we can all greatly improve things for autistic people. Let's start by looking at the medical model of disability versus the social model. One of the greatest paradoxes is that autism is classified as a disability, a diagnosable medical condition. However, autism itself is not disabling. It is the world which disables us because society operates by other people's rules and caters for other people's needs, strengths, and preferences, and not ours. Understanding and recognizing difference is a great starting place to making things better. Taking a moment to consider that other people may have a different interpretation of the same situation and therefore may also have different responses to that same situation. For example, I recognize that when some people are upset or hurt, they are seeking physical comfort of some kind. However, unsolicited physical contact is extremely painful to me. So receiving a hug or touch on the hand or arm is more likely to significantly increase my distress rather than alleviate it. Instead, verbally acknowledging my distress is far more preferable to me than a hug. Telling me you've noticed I'm upset and asking me if I'd like to find a quiet place is what is most helpful to me. Others will have different preferences. So getting accustomed to asking everyone what they need or what would help them is a really great habit to develop. There are numerous societal norms like this, which are either confusing or distressing to many, though not all, autistic people. So pausing and reflecting before behaving in a way that feels instinctive to you could make a huge difference to someone's day. Take time to ask for a person's preference before acting. Making meaningful adaptations, creating inclusive spaces and using inclusive language. Don't be tempted to create a quiet hour. You wouldn't applaud an organisation for installing a ramp or hearing loop for 1 hour on a Tuesday morning, but then making their services inaccessible for the rest of the time. So why do we think this is acceptable for autistic people? Making spaces and environments more welcoming for autistic people often makes it more welcoming and accessible for everyone. Think about being inclusive at all times and not just token times of the day or week. There are so many more ways to help reduce barriers, such as clear and ambiguous communication, providing decompression zones, being accepting when someone tells you they need to stay home and rest. Often the most helpful thing is simply believing people when they say something is too loud, too bright, etc., even if that differs from your experience, and always ask a person what will help them. In simple terms, when barriers are removed and we are seen, heard, and believed, autistic people not only avoid overwhelm and burnout, but we can actually thrive, living well and celebrating our strengths. When autistic strengths are recognised and nurtured, they become catalysts for innovation, integrity, and deep insight. Our different way of seeing the world, often through patterns, precision, and creative thinking, can challenge norms and spark new possibilities. These strengths aren't just personal assets, they're contributions to communities, workplaces, and wider culture. Thriving isn't about fitting in, it's about being valued for who we are. These aren't quirks, they're powerful ways of engaging with the world. So what does being autistic mean to me? Discovering I am autistic is quite simply the best thing that has ever happened to me. I somehow managed to reach the age of 50 with no idea I was autistic. All those myths and misunderstandings served as barriers to me being able to recognise autism in myself. I was denied access to and knowledge of my own identity. Think about that for a moment and what that might mean. What if a fundamental part of your identity had remained hidden from you and everyone around you for 5 whole decades? Reviewing my life through an autistic lens has allowed me to be kinder to myself. I no longer feel broken, inadequate, an alien on the wrong planet. I recognise I belong to a different tribe, and that's okay. Not a broken horse, but a zebra. A key part of this process has been finding my community and connecting with other autistic people. Far from isolating me from society, it's actually helped me rediscover my sense of self and better understand my place in the world. Just because I've found other zebras doesn't mean I can't still hang out with horses. We are perfectly capable of mixing, but please, a plea to all horses out there. Autistic people have worked hard over our lives to understand, learn, and live by your rules and communication styles. We experience frequent overwhelm, meltdowns, shutdowns, and burnout as a result of operating in your confusing and vastly overstimulating world. We would all greatly appreciate it if you took the time to begin to understand our ways of being and meet us in the middle. Difference, not deficit. I hope you found this talk helpful. I am aware that I've only given you a very brief insight into autism, and you might want to go away and find out more. However, be mindful there is an awful lot of information out there, so it's difficult to know where to go and who to trust. Ideally, seek out information given by autistic people. It's also important to acknowledge that everyone experiences autism differently. So getting to know and listening to a range of autistic people is the best way to better understand autism. I'm just one autistic voice. Please take the time to seek out other autistic voices. If you are looking for some onward signposting and useful resources, a great place to start is on the Neurodivergence Wales website. This is the team I work for. We are the national team here in Wales, funded and supported by Welsh Government. Many of us in the team are neurodivergent, and all our information and resources are free, bilingual, and co-produced with advisory groups of neurodivergent people and professionals. If you'd like to further explore neurodivergence, a good starting point are the e-learning modules. There are 3 on autism, 1 on ADHD, and 1 on Tourette's. And if you have neurodivergent children or grandchildren, there's an excellent section for parents and carers with a wealth of helpful information and resources. The contact details are on the slide, and I'm also happy for anyone to contact me if you have any questions or would like a conversation following on from anything you've heard here today. Thank you all for taking the time to listen this evening.
Thanks, Rachel. Marika, did you have your hand up earlier on?
Yeah, gosh, I have a lot. But anyway, when you have like a Sunday school with several kids who have a diagnosis or who are waiting for one, is there something that would be helpful to a few things to provide in the environment of the Sunday school? What do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think that probably the best thing would be if the individual needs of those children are quite different from each other, it makes it harder to accommodate. So I would sort of suggest if the space allows to have separate areas, doesn't have to be separate rooms. You could just sort of provide a little cozier corner that's kind of a little bit has some sort of softer seating, maybe some fiddle toys and things, quieter things, where if a child or children are sort of feeling that it's all a bit overwhelming around the other children and lots of things happening, and it's having that sort of quieter decompression zone where there isn't loads of posters on the walls, loads of visual clutter, bright lights, so it's just, because I appreciate you've only got if as soon as you send someone into a different room, then you've got fewer adults then, haven't you, in the main? So you can sort of do it, you can sort of section off spaces. It doesn't need to be a big area, just a little cozy corner, really, just just an experiment. Just try with different things. It doesn't, if you don't get it right first time or second, just try something different. Don't be frightened to try different things, really. And speaking to the parents as well, if they're younger children, the parents will be able to give you some advice on, what their child really finds most comforting. And for some children, it'd be they need to be busy and active and on the move all the time, so it does, it's trying to sort of have separate zones, really, where those more busy, active, interactive things are going on, or they're just quietly sitting with a book, or and having things that are helpful in sort of those cozy decompression zones, a tactile thing. So it's simple things like maybe a furry cushion cover, or just nice soft things, and that are calming. Does that help, Marika?
Yeah, very much. But it's still good to know how you can support.
There are some resources out there particularly for children, young people, and I certainly have a few as well, Marika. If you need to borrow things, then give me a shout, and I certainly can.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah. Anybody else got any other questions? I mean, I think one of the things that we came up in our breakout room was very much about actually talking to people, asking them, or asking the parents, and so really establishing a relationship and getting to know people and getting to know what actually helps for them. Because if we don't, then we could provide something and it'd be completely wrong. I think that's something we certainly talked about. Was there anything else from Catherine?
Yeah, it just struck me that I was saying in our group, like when I was saying when I did the dementia talk, that if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. It's the same with autism, because it manifests in different ways in every individual. And I think lumping people together, like, it would be the deaf, as if it's sort of amorphous blob, that actually getting to know people, and the fact that Jesus so often said, "What do you want me to do for you?" When we might just assume that what they wanted was, of course he wants healing. Yeah, but that was always Jesus' first way in. And I think we just need to get to know each other better.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think one of the things that came up in our group was, we talked about listening to people and noticing, but also knowing for a church, knowing your space, knowing your structures, and knowing what other people's needs are and what you can be flexible about. And what you and also knowing what you have to offer and remembering that it's there, communicating what is available to people. And we reflected that for a long time we thought that we couldn't really be flexible. We have to do things all this way because this is what people expect. And then COVID happened. So we know that we can be flexible in all sorts of ways. We just have to remember that we can be.
I think one of the things that came out in our group, and I was reflecting on this, that when we changed the structure of our services, because we're going to do cafe church, or we're going to do something different in the service today, actually communicating that really clearly with people so that people understand what is going to happen, that it's not going to be the usual routine, and that it's kind of explained in advance, so it's not a shock and it's not this out of the routine kind of thing. So I think I'm speaking to myself primarily because I'm always the person that changes everything. So yeah, it's keeping that routine for folk, or telling in advance what you're going to do. I think.
I would completely second that, Judy. I'm really glad you raised that, because it's not something I touched on in my talk at all. Is that actually many of us we are flexible and adaptable as autistic people, but it's having that information, as you said, Megan, as well, is having that knowing in advance. Okay, this thing that's going to be that usually happens is not going to happen this week, or it's going to be a little bit different. There's going to be a 50-person choir singing in church, or there's going to be a quiz, you're going to be asked something. It's like, okay, I know that, and having that information in advance means, okay, you can make that informed choice about, okay, this is going to be too much for me, so I'll choose not to go, or no, I can do a little bit of preparing about what to expect and how I'm going to interact with that and turn up. But yes, it's that unexpected, isn't it, that is really difficult to navigate, or can be really difficult to navigate. So having that clarity of communication, and if something can't happen, that's okay. Just know, if that accommodation that would be helpful can't happen for any reason, that's okay. Just let people know. It really is quite simple. And that can sort of manifest in so many different ways. It's about having videos on your church websites about what doors you go in, and what does it look like when you get there, and are people going to be greeting you when you get there? Is there going to be music playing already, or will it start? It's having as much information as possible it does make it welcoming to people then and inclusive, because you can sort of say, oh yes, okay, well I know I'm going to be, know to expect this to happen. So there are things, the information and communication are really key, and I would say that for for lots of different things, not just autism.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing in that kind of discussion. I'm going to hand over to Adela.
Thank you, Judy. So it's my little task to in the evening with prayer stroke reflection, I guess. And we've heard a lot from Rachel, and thank you so much, Rachel, for what you shared with us this evening, and especially what you've just said in these last few sentences, really. In trying to be welcoming, we have to remember, if somebody's with us for the first time, that what we all know as normal routine isn't going to be normal routine for them. And yeah, we just have to be mindful of people who are in our churches. And if there's a new face there, we've got to say a lot more than we may do normally about what's happening in the service. So what I thought might be helpful, it definitely is for me, is just to take a few moments now of quiet and to just reflect back on our evening's programme, in that we had David's devotions and welcome at the beginning. We then had Rachel's PowerPoint about autism. We had our breakout rooms with the various questions and discussions that we shared with one another. And then we've had the plenary discussion. So I just invite you to take a few moments now to think back on those 4 areas of our evening, just to see what might bubble up to the surface, what might be tugging at you to think about more, what God might be saying to you from what you've heard this evening. And then after that, I will just share a Celtic blessing with you. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the Son of Peace to you. So thank you all for joining us this evening. And we have another evening planned for the future, which Jason will no doubt be telling us all about in emails to come. So once again, thank you, Rachel, for your time this evening, for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you all very much for attending, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.